whenever I used to rank like that specific area, the Big Bend area, I would always have like Wakulla listed as if they were a Tallahassee school.
Yeah, I get you there.
Here's one down on the South Florida area coastline. I believe the Treasure Coast area. Treasure Coast versus Vero Beach. Treasure Coast and Vero Beach are both currently undefeated, if I remember correctly, but they both, I would say overall, Treasure Coast probably has looked much more impressive with their undefeated season so far. And Vero Beach, they've struggled quite a bit in some of these games, and they've been playing a lot of tighter games than we would have seen in past years. I'm gonna take, and also Vero Beach, they're on like a 50-plus game winning streak during the regular season. I think Treasure Coast snaps that streak this week and wins over Vero Beach in a district battle that might very well make them district champs going closer to the playoffs. So I'm going to say Treasure Coast by 4.
I'm going with Vero Beach by 21. That's where I'm going with.
Wow. That would actually be a surprise to me.
Yeah, Treasure Coast isn't bad either. They're good too, but I think Vero Beach will pull it off by 21. Vero Beach is just, they've always been a powerhouse in Haiti.
Armwood versus Tampa Bay Tech. Tampa Bay Tech just lost this past week to Bloomingdale. Armwood had a loss in overtime earlier against North Gwinnett up in Georgia. I'm going to say Armwood by 17 here.
To me, this is like a simple pick. Tampa Bay Tech I don't believe they're no match for Armwood. I got Armwood winning by 28.
All right. Cardinal Gibbons versus MacArthur. Cardinal Gibbons, they're coming off the loss to American Heritage Plantation this past week. MacArthur, they've looked decent during the year. I don't know if they really lived up to the expectations that I had before the season, but I'm going to take Cardinal Gibbons here by 7.
Oh, yeah, that was close to what I was going to pick. I was going to pick Cardinal Gibbons by 10. And MacArthur's not a bad school either when it comes to football. But I believe it'll definitely be a close game and a matchup that would be very interesting to many people.
University School versus Columbus. This is going to be a very good game. I can tell it almost looks like a very even matchup. I'm going to take Columbus by 3 here.
Yeah, it's definitely an even matchup between both these schools. I'm going with Columbus by a touchdown, by 7.
All right. I'm going to also throw in the other game, Champagnat Catholic versus Bellin Jesuit. I see Pinko's has Bellin as a 1-point favorite. I'm going to go against that spread and take Champagnat by 4 over Bellin Jesuit.
Well, what I was going to pick was Champagnat by 14.
Oh, wow. I could see that, honestly. Bellin, I really had high hopes for them before the season. I don't really feel like they've really lived up to that. They've really kind of struggled quite a bit for this year.
Yeah, I can agree with that, especially after that game against Columbus that first week. I mean, it was murder. That was a murder. That was like murder right there for their game.
And that was their rivalry game, too. I watched that game, and I was like, wow.
Yeah, that just, it was shocking to hear about just how much the media was all over that game as well. I believe that game made national news as well.
Miami Central versus Miami Norland. This is staying a district game as well. This was part 2 of the 4 teams that used to be in the district of death for the past few years, before Carroll City and Northwestern got moved into other classifications. I have a feeling this game ends up being close, but I feel like Central pulls it out in the end. I'm going to say Miami Central by 7-10.
I was going to say Miami Central by 14. New Orleans, a good school as well at football when they're in that whole district, but honestly, most of the teams that really dominated was always Carroll City Central and Northwestern. And but Central, they just I feel like they can still pull this off by like 2 touchdowns by 14 and they'll just have the bragging rights over New Orleans because I believe this is technically a rivalry game right here.
Yeah, I can buy that. Another one, this is a district game as well. St. Thomas Aquinas versus Plantation. I see this actually being a little bit closer than most people would end up thinking. I'm going to say Aquinas by 10 over Plantation.
I got St. Thomas Aquinas by 24, and the reason why is Plantation. I mean, they've got the players, but I feel like it's just going to be hard for them to play against a team like this, and it's just going to be hard for them to compete with. And I believe Plantation can be a playoff team this year, but it's just a game where I feel like it just won't be their game.
Another thing, though, is I can see Aquinas like coming in this game with a little bit of a letdown, considering like they did put up 56 on Mandarin last week. I don't know if they could really like repeat that performance again this week. They probably exerted a lot of energy doing that.
Yeah, it's possible that they could put up a lot against Plantation, but I just don't see Plantation just getting past them at all this game, or even having a lead, I would say.
This is the last of the high school games we had listed. Miami High versus Coral Gables. I'm going to lean Miami High by 1 here.
And this is a good game to pick, too. I mean, I believe this is the oldest rivalry in all of Miami-Dade County, and these schools it's always been big games between both of these schools, and Coral Gables have had really good years, and so has Miami, but I think after last season, I mean, it's been kind of a weird year with both of those schools, but this one, I got Coral Gables winning by 6 in this one, and like I said, I don't know enough about the Miami-Dade schools, but I just feel like Coral Gables would be able to pull this off, especially after the way Miami was last year and so far how they've been this year.
All right. You mentioned this before we were planning to go on air about the idea of the RPI issue, and you want to touch on it. So, like, what was your overall thoughts, like, with the opening announcements and stuff?
Well, what I've seen is, because I don't fully agree with it, but I understand the reason why it's a new part of the whole playoff system. I've even heard about, like, when they really introduced it last year or the year before. I couldn't remember exactly what year. I know it's still new in a way, but
this is the first year.
It's beneficial when it comes to like time. I feel like it comes beneficial when it comes to like tiebreakers towards the end of the season for like the districts. Like whoever has a better rating, they can get into the playoffs. But I mean, there's been a lot of confusion around the state. I remember when they first released it, I believe a few days ago, where coaches on Twitter and like even like people who are big sports fanatics, it's been very aggressive, I would say, like a whole lot of arguments are going on and people wanted to put in their debates on if it was good or bad. And, I mean, for me, I'm still confused on the whole thing, but I get like how the system, like the math system works for it, but I just don't know how it can all add up exactly with which team should get in, like for 8th or 7th seed, for example, even if they may not deserve it, depending on the teams they played or how the record is.
I think the main purpose of the RPI, the way they're using it, it was to try to minimize the number of potentially teams with losing records being able to get in. And you see that, like, looking at Trinity, they're 3-4, but there's barely into the playoffs, even though they played probably the toughest schedule in Florida.
Yeah, definitely the toughest in the region. I mean, what I feel like it should be is, the district champion gets top 4 for each district, and then the bottom ones, 5 through 8, should be in, like, some of the best teams based off the region. And we'll say this, for example, like, people have been talking about 7A Region 1. 7A4 is probably the weakest district in all the whole region, but 7A1 is strong. I mean, you got 7 teams in that district. It's like Tallahassee schools, Pensacola, Big Bend area ones. And the way I'm seeing it, I feel like one of the district champion for District 4 for 7A would be in, but like 3 schools from 7A1 would be in. But that would make more sense because they have a lot more stronger teams in that district. I feel like that's how it should be. But overall, I feel like the runner-up should just be in like normal as in the bottom 4. And that's the way I see it.
Of course, like if they went that approach for that region, I can't imagine how bad the runner-up in 7A District 4 would be. Like I couldn't imagine how bad that would end up looking when they have to go up against one of the other 3 districts in the opening round of the playoffs. We might be looking at a 60-point blowout.
But yeah. And that's what I'm saying, but I think where it's really confusing or rough is like the 4A through 1A, where it's regional. Because that's the one where I think a lot of people are very confused on, and it's a lot harder to pick. And we all remember what happened last year with, that coin toss that pretty much had, I would say, set the whole sports community on fire in Duval County when Jackson didn't get in over Gadsden County, who didn't win a single game, but they played a lot of very tough teams.
Yeah, well, another thing I will also point out for 2 things, specifically with Jackson, then I'll hit into another major point I was going to hit. One, Jackson, I know people said a lot of things about, like, they hate the idea of a team with a losing record getting in. Jackson was 4-5, so no matter what way they went, they're still getting a losing team in the playoffs. Another note. During the offseason, Jackson was scheduled to play Lee, and it ended up being Jackson finished with 9 games on the schedule. Under the point system, Lee would have been a Category 1 team. A loss to a Category 1 team would add 38 points to your average. You put that 38 points into Jackson's average at the end of that year, they would have been over Gadsden County and in the playoffs.
And that's the thing, too. They should have always kept that rivalry, too. It's definitely a historical Duval County rivalry right there. And
they would have been 4-6, but they would have been in the playoffs. So, really, I don't know if... I'm definitely going to probably piss off a lot of Jackson fans by making this comment. I said it during the offseason. I was like, this is going to come back to bite them in the ass. And what do you know? It kind of did.
Yeah, I guess you could say that, but like I said, I know the whole RPI thing is to kind of like motivate people to schedule tough games. But honestly, it's just I feel like teams should still do that, but it's just that whole RPI system. I mean, I feel like it isn't really helping them like when it comes to scheduling, and I feel like it's kind of like to motivate schools to test like the team courage and like bravery of like teams who are moderate to play like really tougher schools. That's just the way I see it. And even though I've seen comments on Twitter saying that whole trying to schedule tougher teams, it isn't exactly rewarding even when some teams are getting like destroyed as well.
I think in a way the idea is you schedule better teams that you can beat. That's the kind of the idea. Like look at Columbia, for example. This has system, the point system and the RPI. The last 2 years, Columbia for the first year of the point system finished second overall in the 7A North in the total points. Of course, they were runner-up, so they went to the 5th seed. The only team that finished higher point total was Barton Trail, who I believe they had a very strong schedule themselves, and Columbia had 3 losses that season. And then last year, Columbia goes 9-1. They finish clear 3 points ahead of everyone else in 7A North. That was an example of the scheduling with the system benefiting a team for playing tough. And then this year, second overall in the 6A Region 1 under the RPI. And they're undefeated. I feel like in a way it does kind of prove if you schedule good teams and then beat those teams, you do get rewarded because you'll be higher than teams that are beating weaker opponents.
Yep, but I still believe that record plays a part, like having a either 5-5 record or winning record as well. So they at least make the top 4 or bottom 4, depending on what the situation is with their district as well.
I'm glad you bring up record